I decided to go to school. When I was in the Army, I was in boot camp, and there was a lieutenant there who wanted me to go to OCS, and it was Officers Candidate School, and I didn't want to go because that meant I'd have to re-up for 3 years, and I didn't want to stay in the Army 3 years. But in the process, I got my high school diploma by taking the test. I never can remember the name of that test. What is it? GA? Well, anyway, I got credit for high school and 2 years of college. So when I got out of the Army in Korea, excuse me, I got a little cold there. I went back and I went to Oklahoma University for a half term, and I didn't like it. The business administration. But I knew it wasn't for me. And during finals, I just packed up and went back to California. Found out I did pretty good in the finals. Later, I thought I flunked them all. But I went to California, and I was working for my father, who was a carpet layer. And I knew I didn't want to do that very long. That's no fun. And so one day, well, now we got to go back again to probably 8 years earlier, when I met a man named Paul Gregory, who was he was a soda jerk when I first met him. I worked in the Shell service station, and he worked in the Gotham drugstore on Hollywood Boulevard. And he always said, "You ought to be an actor. You ought to be an actor." I said, "I don't like part of it. Don't bother me." And now 8 years later, I ran into him when I was going to Korea, and he was now an agent in 1950. And, well, I guess it wasn't 8 years later, was it? 5 to 6 years later. And now he pulled up in front of Greenblatt's Delicatessen in a big Cadillac convertible, and he was doing fine, and I was going to get shot at. And he said, "You should be an actor." I poo-pooed it. And I went to Korea, and then I came back, and as I say, I went to school and came back to California. And I went downtown to see if I could go to Arabia to work in the oil fields, which I'd worked in Texas when I was 17, 18 in the oil fields, so I figured a good way to make some money. And they weren't looking for roughnecks, they were looking for geologists, and I didn't have that degree. So as I was coming back, I was driving up La Cienega Boulevard, and there's a building there, Paul Gregory and Associates. And here he is, he's now a big agent and producer. And this is, 2 years later or more, 2.5. And a lady pulled out of a parking spot right in front of the building. And I pulled in and went in and talked to her. If that lady hadn't have pulled out of that parking spot, I probably never would have been an actor. But anyway, I went in, I talked to him. And at that time, you could be an agent and a producer. They stopped that eventually. So he signed me to an agency contract, and so he was doing a couple of plays, and he said he was going to put me in one of them, which he did, which was the Kane Mutiny Court Martial with Lloyd Nolan, and, Henry Fonda, and John Hodiak. And that was my first interest in the acting business. I did that play in a non-speaking role for a year.